Instead of competing with each other to finish off the groundwater, if we together come and then fill the aquifer, both of us have water. The rain that you let off into the drains or to the road from your house causes floods. So if you want floods to be prevented, you should harvest rainwater. Two, the water that you depend from your borewell or open well comes from rainwater alone, which goes into the aquifer. So if you recharge your aquifer or store water, you're going to solve your water shortage problem. These are the two reasons why citizens should get involved with rainwater harvesting, because water is becoming scarcer and scarcer. It's a one-time investment and a lifetime of collection. When you pour water and you see the earth drinking it, gata gata gata, as they say in Kannada, it's a fantastic feeling because you're slaking the thirst of Mother Earth, right? And when you do it enough, the well fills up with water. You understand, oh, this is the place where water seems to infiltrate well. Just as a matter of example, old termite mounds or trees which are green in summer show areas where you can put the water in. Understand where the soil is more spongy, make sure that it's more sandy, and make sure that it goes in. That's the recharge zone. But we have to make a beginning. And the beginning is a drum or a bucket below a rain spout. That's rainwater harvesting at its simplest.
Welcome to GoGreenGuru Sustainability in Action. I'm your host Ananya Sangameshwar, and today we're diving deep into something that's so precious and integral to our lives: water. We take it for granted, right? But today, Bengaluru and several cities in India are facing the threat of a water crisis. But it's time we work in synergy with water. We have a very simple yet effective practice that each of us can adopt to build water resilience: rainwater harvesting. We have with us today Vishwanath Sir, Director, Biome Environmental Solutions and founder-trustee, Biome Environmental Trust. Biome is doing phenomenal work in ecological design and water management with a focus on community and collaboration. Their work has won them accolades, including the Transformative Cities Award. We delve into the why and how of rainwater harvesting. Look at how we can approach designing and implementing the whole system in our homes and communities, and address some of the questions and challenges we may face as citizens on this journey. Not just that, we reimagine the way we look at water itself. So tune into this episode if you'd like to feel empowered to build water resilience. A very warm welcome to GoGreenGuru, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Ananya, and hope you're doing good too.
Thank you so much. I'm doing amazing, and I'm really excited for learning more about rainwater harvesting, learning about the work of Biome. It's really an inspiring journey, and I'm sure you have a lot of wisdom and interesting stories to share. So I'm really looking forward.
I'm not sure about the wisdom part, but definitely the experience, I'm happy to share that.
Absolutely. So to start off with, I'd love to know the story of your relationship with water. How has that evolved over time?
Well, I studied to be a civil engineer, and as part of civil engineering, hydrology was one of the courses that we were taught, and we were lucky to have a very good professor who conveyed the idea of hydrology very nicely, and so one got perhaps as interested as one could get as a college student in water. Later on, I finished urban planning from the School of Planning, Ahmedabad, where I started to understand water in its context of a city or the region. And finally, when I started to work with the Housing and Urban Development Corporation, I was looking at housing projects and urban infrastructure projects, which gave me a close contact with water, especially how communities interact with water. And even as early as the late 80s, one could see that water was a crisis. And so when I was building my house, I saw that it was raining at one point of time. Me and Chitra, who's an architect and who's my wife, both of us were standing at the house and it was raining. We were buying water from a tanker and we thought, hey, something wrong here. Why should rainwater be wasted and why should we be paying for tanker water? So we then decided to start to work on harvesting rainwater, learning more about the relationship of local waters with our lives and how we can engage with it in a meaningful fashion.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sharing. How you actually observed your surroundings, observed your house, and you saw what's really happening there, and you tried to bring changes to really harness the rainwater which was right there, but which was getting wasted earlier. So then, how did this lead to Biome? Why and how did you start Biome? What's your dream with that?
So that this was the day of the web was coming into place, right? We didn't have the internet, Ananya, when I started my career as an engineer, urban planner. So as the net was coming, we got really excited about the possibilities of sharing knowledge and learning from all across the globe. So we started a website called rainwaterclub.org, and we thought that the virtual world would be a world where we could not have to register your company. You could just be a knowledge management kind of a hub and a knowledge learning hub. So I started to track rainfall patterns, daily rainfall data, which I used to get from the Indian Meteorological Department, try to find out how much water actually falls on a particular area in a city. And then to devise Excel sheet based files to calculate how much rain could be harvested. So when I learned that in Bangalore, from a 100 square meter roof area, you could actually harvest about 1 lakh liters of rainwater, that was sort of mind blowing. And so then you thought, hey, why are we wasting all this resource? Why don't we check and make sure that the quality is good and that we could capture it? So we started as rainwaterclub.org in, I think, the late 90s. Then we had to formally become Biome Trust somewhere along the line, because if you want to run a NGO or civil society group, you have to conform to the financial norms of the country. So we registered Biome Trust. And it's been a great journey because there have been excellent people who come in as my colleagues and who have contributed a lot to the knowledge that we have created and the experience that we've got from the field and what we've been able to implement on the ground. So good people around you, great people around you, and great ideas in times of a societal need is where Rainwater Club and Biome started.
What have you learned along the way?
So, any crisis with a natural resource or any issue of managing a natural resource, in Rohini Nilekani's words, involves Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazar, meaning society, that's we, us people, Sarkar, which is the state and its institutions, Bazar, as in the market, right? Service providers who provide services and other products around it. So what we've been doing is to weigh on one too much and let the other two become bit players. What I've learned is that if you have a balance between all three, then great solutions are possible. But at the heart of it is the community. If individuals and communities are not feeling that they need to become part of the solution or work with it, then it's very difficult for either the state to have sustainable solutions or for the market to provide affordable solutions. The market will generally leave out the poor. The state will be inefficient and will also leave out quite a set of people. But if we work with communities, then it's possible to retain local waters, develop an understanding of local waters, and be able to supplement the work of the state as well as the market and be self-sufficient to a large extent. That's been my broad learning. The other final point that I want to make is that we should see water from a societal lens. Water is not just a physical product, it's a social product, it's a social construct. We have done many discriminations around water, and we've also done a lot of mm, bad distribution around water. We should avoid that. We should make sure that water is accessible for all.
And even with GoGreenGuru, what we are trying to do is we are focusing on the community, on the people. How can we, as such, as citizens, take charge of the whole thing and all, and really understand the nuances and the context? Even today, there's the water crisis which is happening in Bangalore and in many urban places in India. So, what have you learned about the water crisis, and why? What are the challenges really, and why should we care about it?
We are in the era of climate change, global warming, 1.5 degrees rise in temperature. The hydrological cycle is being affected, but it's also affecting itself on a layer which is already very bad, environmentally speaking, right? We are destroying old growth forests. The Western Ghats, the hub of our rivers, are being destroyed as we speak. Local lakes and rivers are being polluted or are being consumed by real estate. Construction debris go into water bodies. We are not engaging enough to make sure that aquifers are recharged, right? We don't understand recharge zones and push water into groundwater. We're a groundwater civilization. So it's a complex case of neglect and an overconsumption of resources and a lack of attention to pollution. This has been the reason why water is becoming increasingly scarce and difficult for people to access.
And as you unravel this problem, as you researched more about it over time, so what have you discovered as the solution? So, like, what can we, as of course, there are many things to be done at a systemic level, but then as citizens or at a community level, what all is possible today?
So let's talk about two contexts where I've been working on. One is the rural context of the tank ecosystem. We have keres, as we call in Canada. These are human-made water bodies by throwing a bund across a valley, right? This was done 1,000 years back, 1,200 years back, some of them 500 to 600 years back. But this tank ecosystem was the hub of water for the village for a long, long time. But they were created during a feudal time when aristocracy was in place, when there were palegars and kings and such. Now we are in a democracy. So, in a democracy, how should an old historical ecosystem like a tank function? Some learnings. If water comes to a tank in a village, who benefits? Usually, it's those who have the land. The more land you have, the more you benefit from the water because you can get one crop, two crops, or three crops. But if you don't have land, how does water matter to you? At best, it may give you some bit of drinking water, but anyway, the government is giving you the drinking water. So, how do you make sure that there's equal access societally to the waters of the tank, which is a rainwater harvesting system, right? That what we've learned is then you involve the landless, especially the women, as part of the solution. And you make sure that they are engaged right from the beginning with a share of the pie being the water that comes. So they clean up the feeder channels, the distribution channels, make the ecosystem robust so that everybody has access to water. But in turn, the village promises to keep, let's say, 1/3 of the water for goats and sheep. The landless people generally have goats and sheep. So therefore, they are able to make a living out of the waters in the tank. Another thing that can be done is that the fishing rights of the water body can go to women self-help groups, especially to people who don't own land, right? So therefore, you have to negotiate the benefits of water in a just and equitable manner so that everybody gains, not that somebody gains. So remember, water is not just an environmental construct or a physical construct, it's a social construct, right? It's a societal construct. And so therefore, you have to work on the social construct to regenerate the ecological construct and the physical construct. That's one thing in the village context. In the urban areas, take a city like Bangalore. Bangalore had a lot of lakes and tanks, but necessarily had to go to the Arkavati and the Kaveri River to bring water from far because in the era of drought, in the years of drought, like if you had continuous 2 or 3 years of drought, the tanks were insufficient to provide water to people. Modern human beings need 135 liters per capita per day, or at least a bare minimum 100 liters per capita per day, right? 100 liters per person per day. The tanks and lakes are not sufficient to give that 100 liters per person per day. So therefore, we have to combine the tanks as a supplement and bring water from the river. But we have to make sure that it is universally accessible. Piped water should reach everybody. Some water for all, not all water for some, right? That's the way we have to think. Plus, we have to think about what we call integrated urban water management, meaning we must think of rainwater as a resource. We must think of groundwater as a resource, surface water, lakes, rivers, and streams as a resource, piped water from the river as a resource, and finally, wastewater or treated wastewater as a resource. If we plan including all these five, then we have substantially enough resource to manage ourselves. But if we plan in silos, only look at one or the other, then we will run out of water because there's no resource. But all the planning with all the forms of water has to be universal access. Everybody should get their fair share of water as a human right and later on as an economic good. 50 liters per person per day, for example, free because it's a human right, but the 51st liter to be charged so that you conserve water and that you make sure that the institution providing the water has the monies to invest in extending the infrastructure, keeping the network going, right? So these are the two things that I learned: societal concerns and universal access.
Yeah, very valid points. So essentially, we look at water as an ecosystem. We can see it today as well, like how we have a lot of water, we have enough rainwater coming in, but we are still facing a scarcity of water. We take water from many kilometers away, and At the same time, we see our streets flooded during any heavy rains. So there is some kind of paradox happening there. So when we look at water in this terms of design, in terms of an overall design, I think we can work on mitigating this.
Exactly. As you rightly point out, floods and droughts are the common, the cause for both floods and droughts are the same: mismanagement of rainwater. If you mismanage rains when they fall, they cause floods. And if you mismanage rains when they're actually falling, you can cause a drought. The same water, if it's stored in a lake or a pond or in the aquifer below, when it is raining heavily, will become drought proofing solutions for us in the summer months, right? Or in the dry season. So both of them have the same cause, and it's water harvesting that is the solution for both floods and droughts.
Let's dig a bit deeper into water harvesting. So how would you demystify water harvesting? Now we've all heard of it, but we're like, what is it really? How do you really explain this to a layperson?
Well, at its simplest, let's say rain is falling on the rooftop, just put a drum below the pipe which brings the water down from the rooftop, and you're rainwater harvesting, right? It's not rocket science. You can collect the water. You can use it for your plants or pots or for washing your garden or watering your garden or washing your driveway, right? So that's rainwater harvesting. It's as simple as that, a drum below a rain spout. Once you start, and it's always the starting trouble that we have, we think of it as a theoretical exercise, then we don't move. But just put that bucket or the drum below a rain pipe and you've started with rainwater harvesting. Then you'll start to understand how much volume of water is falling. And when the bucket overflows or the drum overflows, you'll say it's as a waste, right? Because you're starting to collect. If you don't collect, everything is a waste, but you don't mind. But when you start to collect, overflow is a waste. Then you make bigger drums. You start to understand how the rainfall pattern is. What is the quality of rainwater? What can I do to store it? Can I recharge it into the ground? So, for example, recharging means a small pit in the ground, which you put water in and let it infiltrate into the ground. That can become a recharge well, which is usually 3 feet in diameter and 20 feet deep in the Bangalore context, right? So when you pour water and you see the earth drinking it, gata, 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 as they say in Kannada, it's a fantastic feeling because you're slaking the thirst of Mother Earth, right? And when you do it enough, the well fills up with water. Then you can start to draw it. So it's a compact that we have between the rain and earth and the soil. And we're privileged to be part of the solution making space. But we have to make a beginning. And the beginning is a drum or a bucket below a rain spout. That's rainwater harvesting at its simplest.
I love how you started with that simple step, because if we get overwhelmed, we need to, design the whole system, need to consult experts. Of course, all that comes, but then this is the starting point.
You don't have to consult an expert. It's so simple. And you don't have to think of, all my roof I want to harvest, I'll need a large sum. No, just even 100-liter drum will fill up 60 times if you use it every time, because it rains 60 days in a year in Bangalore. So 100-liter drum into 6,000 liters of water, right?
Whoa.
For our use. So that's the way we must begin and not let it overwhelm us with its complexities.
Thank you for breaking it down into that simple way. Taking that simple step will not be a problem for us. So that will be a good starting point.
And one of the other things you can do, Ananya, is to buy a rain gauge. You can make your own rain gauge, or you can buy a rain gauge for as low as 700 or 800 rupees these days. If you make it yourself, it won't cost you more than 20 rupees with a PET bottle. Just place a rain gauge and start to measure rain every day, right? Whenever it rains, you'll be astounded at the number that starts to come to you. And then you'll start to think, oh my God, how much water am I wasting with the rainfall? So rain gauge is a good beginning.
So now let's look at it from the point of view of citizens. Maybe there are different concerns people have, or there are different things they want to understand about it. Maybe I'll ask some questions from the point of view of a citizen who's unfamiliar with this idea, and we can go from there. So say I'm a citizen, why should I actually do rainwater harvesting? What's the purpose? Why is it my problem or my responsibility?
Why is it my problem? So, two reasons. One, the rain that you let off into to the drains or to the road from your house causes floods. So, if you want floods to be prevented, you should harvest rainwater. Two, the water that you depend from your borewell or open well comes from rainwater alone, which goes into the aquifer. So if you recharge your aquifer or store water, you're going to solve your water shortage problem. These are the two reasons why citizens should get involved with rainwater harvesting, because water is becoming scarcer and scarcer in this world of ours. And it's becoming costly. Like people are finding in Bangalore that when you buy tanker water, it's now astronomical figures. 150 rupees a 1,000 liters, 200 rupees a 1,000 liters. That's an enormous amount of money that you have to pay. But if everybody does rainwater harvesting, starting with us, then we won't have this problem at all of water shortages. That's why we must do rainwater harvesting.
Absolutely. And then let's look at it from a monetary point of view as well. So let's compare, say, in one household, if we go things the normal route, maybe we get piped water from the municipal supply, maybe we dig bore wells for getting more water, or maybe we get some water tankers, and then finally we need to filter our water as well for drinking. So all of that leads to some expenses. So that versus if we follow rainwater harvesting, what would the expenses compare like?
So here's the thing. If you're building a new house or a new apartment, rainwater harvesting will not cost you anything at all. Because usually people in Bangalore and many other cities build large sump tank to store piped water from the network, or when we buy from tankers, or they have drilled a bore well already, right? People have a roof on their heads, and that roof needs downpipes to bring all the rainwater down. So everything is done. The roof is there, the catchment, the pipes which bring it down, the storage, or the structure which will receive recharged water. All you need to invest in is a filter. If you put in a filter, you're then able to harvest all the rooftop rainwater. Only smart thing to do, make sure that the downpipes are in the direction of the sump tank or the direction of the well. Just slope the roof that way, put a filter, and you harvest it. So it will cost you something like 5,000 rupees or 7,000 rupees. When you're spending 80 lakhs, 60 lakhs, 50 lakhs on your house, 5,000 rupees is 1% or less, right? So it really doesn't cost you anything at all if you're smart. It's a new house. So a new house, there's no reason at all why you shouldn't do rainwater harvesting on the basis of cost. Let's take an old house when you have to retrofit. Again, think smart. As I was talking to you before, don't think of capturing the whole roof. Just capture the pipe nearest to the sump tank. There will always be one down pipe nearest to the sump tank. Stick a filter, leave it to your existing sump tank or a well that you have, right? Again, the cost would not be more than 5,000 to 7,000 rupees. Yes, you will not collect all the roof rainwater, but once you make a beginning, you'll start to then invest in phases, overcoming the cost barrier and collect it. I, for example, pick up rainwater from the staircase roof, right? The staircase roof in every home is slightly at an elevated place. It's a clean catchment because nobody ever walks on it. That water I use only for drinking and cooking. Now, if I were to substitute that water by buying water for drinking and cooking, I pay 5 rupees for 20 liters from an RO plant. I have to go to the RO plant and buy it and bring it. If I buy it as bottled water, which is 20 rupees for a liter, right? So here's all the years drinking and cooking water which comes from rainwater for free. Once I put in that 500-liter HDB tank to store it, right? A plastic drum to store it. So it depends on which water you want to substitute. If you substitute drinking and cooking water, your return on investment is almost 6 months. Within that, you recover your money. Then by beginning small and doing it when your house is being built, you reduce the costs and make sure that the water is available. Finally, remember one thing with rainwater harvesting. It's a one-time investment and a lifetime of collection. All that you need to do over the lifetime of the structure is just to keep cleaning the filter now and then. And it's a very easy task. It takes no more than 5 minutes, especially it has to be done after a rainy day. So single investment, 25 years of rainwater collection. That's the beauty of the system.
And if we look at digging bore wells, what about that expense?
But it's a
Huge
one-time expense without any guarantee, because you may or may not strike water, right? So people now, for example, in Bangalore are drilling to 1,400 feet, spending 4 lakh to 5 lakh rupees, and maybe you don't get any water at all after spending 5 lakhs. The same 5 lakhs, if we built a large 50,000 liter sump tank, you'd be assured of all the year-round supply from your rooftop.
That's very true. So the bore well, when we dig also, with more time there is less guarantee, but with rainwater harvesting there is no fluctuation of sorts.
Exactly, Ananya. So what happens is, in competitive drilling, your neighbor drills a borewell 600 feet, you drill 800 feet, poor chap's borewell goes dry. He then goes 1,000 feet, your borewell goes dry. So it becomes competitive consumption, whereas we need cooperative refilling, right? Instead of competing with each other to finish off the groundwater, if we together come and then fill the aquifer, both of us have water. So I'll tell you the example of a gated community. There they banned individual borewells and they made rainwater harvesting and recharge mandatory. 360 sites were there. All 360 houses recharged the aquifer and only 3 borewells were allowed, right? So everybody is participating in recharging the aquifer, but community is drawing water from 3 borewells and supplying it, putting a meter and saying we will not use more than 20,000 liters a month. So therefore, there is self-sustenance. Imagine the scenario otherwise. All 360 of them would have sunk borewells, one after the other. 2 lakh rupees per borewell. Even if we imagine that cheaper cost, it's 7.2 crore rupees in sinking borewells, which will all go dry. Whereas if you do the rainwater harvesting, it only costs 50,000 rupees to do a recharge structure. Not only are you saving money, but you're making sure that water becomes sustainably available for you. So we have to think of ourselves as a community rather than an individual competing with the community. Right? We have to think of ourselves working together to solve the problem.
That's a really important perspective, looking at it as a community's resource rather than just for an individual need. Because when we actually share and contribute together, we get much more benefits together and no one's
Absolutely.
left behind.
And there's one very interesting example that we had with the open well that we revived recently. The women of the community came and said, don't put a pump. If you put a pump, we will waste the water or it will go to the apartments nearby and the well will go dry. We will go to the well and sedify, draw the water from the pulley and use the water ourselves. We need no more than 4 pots in a day and all of us will go to the water and draw it. So even now in this peak summer in Bangalore, there's still water in an open well. And the women are getting water from that open well for their use. So demand management, understanding how much can the earth provide and staying within those limits of the earth's provision is crucial. And who brought the knowledge? The women who actually lift the water from the well. So listen to the community, especially listen to women in the community because they're the key bearers of water, and take their advice in making sure whatever rainwater harvesting systems we design are designed for them and with them because they are the water ministers.
Yeah, gender has a really important connection with water. Women have that understanding that when we live in close proximity to nature or to our resources, when we actually look and understand, look and observe, then it really helps us use it better.
So I don't want to stereotype, but men think of large infrastructure projects, build an overhead tank, build a borewell, put pipes and pumps and move things around, spend tons of money. Whereas women think of how do I get water at my house? And that's a different lens altogether. When you say, I'm not bothered about the large infrastructure, I want water for my needs near my house. The answers are different as solutions.
If suppose I invest in a rainwater harvesting structure now in my house, so how long does it take for me to see the results, or like maybe get water or recharge the aquifer in an
The first rain
estimated?
will give you water. The ideal combination is one of storage and recharge, right? You store some and you push the other into the aquifer. The very first rain will give you the benefits. It will start from day one. Suppose you're doing your rainwater harvesting in the month of April. The April showers and May showers themselves will start to bless you with water. When water is the most scarce and critical and crucial, you'll be able to get those waters and then start to use it. And obviously, during the rainy season, you'll have plenty of water. August, September, October, November. These 4 months are abundant rains, so we will benefit a lot from it.
So we collect some in a tank and then we do some purification system and we can use that for drinking, cooking purposes, and
Keep
other
the roof
we
clean.
recharge. Yeah.
Yeah, keep the roof clean so that there's no leaves or anything on it. Right, dust it with the broom. Make sure you have a filter, a good filter, and then collect it in the sump tank. So then the water is very good. If you find any problems, you can use a bit of chlorine tablets, 1 or 2 chlorine tablets to disinfect the water if you think that the water is bad, right? And then you can use it directly. So it's as simple as that. You don't need any filtration post storage. You don't need anything at all. Just chlorine tablets will help. You get this beautiful H2S vial testing kits. These are small bottles where you can put a bit of the water and check for bacteria. In 36 hours, if it goes black, there's E. coli in it. So then you put the chlorine tablets. Doesn't glow back, you don't even have to put the chlorine tablets. It's good to go.
How do we approach the whole designing of the system? Like, how do we understand my context and then build the whole system accordingly?
So one thing to do is to get data on the rainfall in your locality. How much does it rain in a year? That gives you the total volume of rainwater that you can harvest. The second is to study the number of rainy days. How many days does it rain and which month does it rain? So that's the distribution. So when you understand the distribution, you optimize your storage system for that distribution. Don't build a huge tank to store all the water in the beginning. Just build a small tank, store the water, and allow the overflow to a recharge well. Put it into the ground. So optimize your storage system based on the rainfall pattern in your area. However, in many water scarce areas, perhaps you will have to build a large tank because that will be the only water that you get for drinking and cooking, right? That will be the only water. Like in Gujarat or Rajasthan, that may be the size. But in urban areas, rainwater is usually a supplement to all other waters. And supplement means that you need to build a small tank.
So we understand our rainfall patterns and then also see our roof size and then do it accordingly.
Yes, multiply by that. That's a coefficient of runoff. Calculate what is the runoff for each rain, and then optimize your design on what you feel comfortable. Usually, let's say a 1,000-liter tank will fill up 60 times. A 6,000-liter tank will fill up maybe 20 times alone, right? So it depends on what you're comfortable with your budget, and you then put the tank. But begin with once you put that system in place, then you can automatically expand it when you want to.
So this is for an independent house context. And then also, how do we, check if we're doing it the correct way? How do we understand if it's effective, doing auditing and all of that?
So one of the things is to figure out from your neighbors, somebody or the other would have done rainwater harvesting. So pick the nearest neighbor that you think was rainwater harvesting and find out and ask them. They'll be able to give you very good advice. Don't go very far. In the city of Bangalore, if you're here, we have a rainwater harvesting theme park. In Chennai, there's a rain center. You can go to this theme park or rain center and get a lot of advice on how to manage and maintain the system. There are many websites which give you information on do's and don'ts of rainwater harvesting. So do that. But hey, try it. If you fail, you will learn and you will improve. It's not going to kill you, right? You'll only maybe have a leaking pipe or a leak somewhere in your sump tank or somewhere near the filter, something of that sort. Nothing that you can't fix it. Don't think that you can do everything foolproof in one go. I've had flooding from my rooftop into my basement at one point of time because I did a stupid thing of trying to filter it at the roof level itself. But that teaches you a lesson and then you improve. Approach it with this with humility and a sense of learning. And then as you go along, you'll get better at it. And it's not rocket science. You'll fix it within a month.
Yeah, you learn as you go.
Absolutely. Make mistakes. Yeah, the world is made to make mistakes.
So, and then what about at a community level? How do we go about it?
So like I said, cooperation is the way to go. So what we need to do if we want to recharge the aquifer is to identify what are called recharge zones. These are areas where the water percolates into the earth and gets into the aquifer fast. And there are discharge zones where the water comes up at the groundwater table and you can draw the water from either open wells or borewells or shallow filter borewells or deep borewells, right? So with the community, map the geology of the place, take the help of a professional if you want to, and make sure that you understand these recharge and discharge zones. But do so in a spirit of sharing where everybody recharges, but there's only community drawl and sharing of the waters that have been so recharged. Don't go for private borewells to draw the water out and private recharge. That may be the individual thing that to do if you don't have a sense of community. But at a community level, it gets more effective.
Get a larger area together and you share it together as a resource.
Absolutely, because then you have roads and open spaces and parks also becoming available to you. All these are recharge zones, not just your site or building. All these common areas and common facilities. And in apartments, the stormwater drains become great places for recharge. So identify every one of the places where you can put the water in. Make sure that it's not polluted, right? Make sure that there's no raw sewage. Make sure that there's no solid waste being dumped there, no oil and grease there, that in the catchment. And then make sure that it goes through a filtration process before it reaches the aquifer or before it is stored.
So how do we understand the context of our region? Like, how do we understand what is a recharge zone, discharge zone? Does that occur naturally?
So it's a water literacy that we have to, once we are familiar with this term, Google it. You'll figure out what it means. And there'll be a lot of other information available to you. And it's simple common sense. If you ask a traditional well digger in our place or somebody with the common sense, you understand, oh, this is the place where water seems to infiltrate well. Just as a matter of example, old termite mounds or trees which are green in summer show areas where you can put the water in easily. Yeah. So look at the landscape. If it's sandy soil, then it recharges well. If it's clay soil, it won't go in fast. If it's hard rock, it won't go in, obviously. So understand where the soil is more spongy, make sure that it's more sandy, and make sure that it goes in. That's the recharge zone. That's the way you have to do. Hilltops, recharge zones. Valleys, discharge zones. Normal understanding. So that's, you learn as you go along.
And if the land is sloping in a certain way, so the bottom of the slope is where we let water percolate inside?
The top. So it's called the ridge
top
to
we
valley approach.
percolate.
You put the water in at the top and you draw it from the bottom.
Okay, got it. So we understand the lay of the land. And then that maybe
And
will get us closer to nature also.
yeah, and then you understand the rock layer below. Sometimes the land itself may not be talking to the rock layer below or the clay layer below. So you have to understand both the top of the surface of the land as well as what is below the soil.
So we dig an experiment in that way.
You have a history. Like if you have old wells which have been around for a long time, which have water, that's the discharge zone. That's where you'll get the water. If you have drilled borewells, you know what is the depth of the casing, which tells you the weathered zone, right? So there's a lot of other signals that you can pick up.
How do we do it on a rooftop in a community level as well? How do we go about it?
Yeah, so at a community level, every rooftop is something that is private generally, or there's a common clubhouse or common feature there, right? Or a school, for example, in a community, gated community. So there the rooftop rainwater harvesting system remains the same. You pick all the water, bring it down pipes, filter it, and store it. And excess, put it into the ground, right? So that's a recharge. So you do that there at that scale. But at a community level, like I keep telling you, roads and stormwater drains afford you the potential for more recharge. So you do it there also. Make recharge wells and recharge pits in the storm drains and allow the water to infiltrate.
Yeah, make the best use of the possible resources.
Yeah. Divide the land into rooftops, paved surfaces, and unpaved surfaces. Rooftops are generally the cleanest water, so you can collect it. Paved surfaces, there may be a bit of pollution and dust, so you need to biologically filter it through swales and green filters. Then unpaved surfaces by themselves are allowing recharge. Make sure that you have it as a valley or a trough or a swale so that water percolates down. 3, roof, paved, unpaved.
So how do we actually go about convincing people or getting the community along to practice it?
So always there are a few good people to begin with. You start with 5 or 10 volunteers who come forward and who are volunteering, and then it's a slow process of negotiation and explaining the benefits and demonstrating it through those initial pilot structures that you do. And in general, most people are convinced over some period of time. Start with the early movers. They will be the first to put in the money and do the stuff. Then talk a lot about it. Allow the message to go to everybody. Persuade more and more people. And once you cross a threshold, then everybody joins in.
So, but whoever's ready, just start off.
Correct. Be polite and humble. Don't impose your ideas and values. Don't go about being a proselytizer or an evangelist for rainwater harvesting. Get the message in slowly. Don't make yourself a nuisance for other people with your wonderful idea. Just be gently persuasive. Keep showing and demonstrating and saying what's happening, and then people come on board.
So, how do you pitch it to your RWA as well, as in a community?
Just show examples of other RWAs. Just show examples. Take them to one of the things that I've noticed is if you go see what an RWA has done and observe what is there, then it really makes a difference to you. Rather than any PowerPoint or any amount of talking, seeing is believing. And absolutely seeing and working is believing. And when RWAs talk to other RWAs and understand the problems of the system also, how to deal with it, that's a very powerful mover.
Learning from people who have done it, from communities who have done it.
Exactly.
Great way, yeah. And I think in the biome or the urban water side, there are resources on how to convince people.
Yeah, we've made comic books, we've made examples, we've highlighted the work of people, and a lot of case studies are available for you. And there are contact numbers where you can phone people and find out from them. Well diggers are listed, plumbers are listed, books are made available, brochures are made available. We're a learning platform for everybody to tap in and get what they want. These days, there's a solid amount of volunteering that many communities do and many people do with solid waste, for example, or with lakes, for example, or parks or dogs like that, right? So these people who have a sense of working with community are the best to be tapped into with rainwater harvesting.
Are there any government schemes and policies and all of that which help
Yes.
support the adoption?
So there's a regulation which says that every new home has to have rainwater harvesting. It's mandated now in Bangalore. And it also tells you what the rainwater harvesting should be. So it says that for every square meter of roof area, you need to create a 60-liter storage or recharge structure, right? And if for every square meter of paved area, you need to create a 30-liter storage or recharge structure. And you'll get your water connection from the BWSSB only if you demonstrate that you've done rainwater harvesting. Else, if you don't do rainwater harvesting, you have to pay a penalty. You have to pay 25% extra over your water bill for the first 6 months. And if you still don't do it, you have to pay 50% extra over that, right? So there are regulations in place. Similarly, the BBMP makes it mandatory for every plan approval to have rainwater harvesting to show that, right? And to show how rainwater harvesting is to be done. So those regulations and bylaws are already there. We just need to follow the law.
And sometimes the structure is there in place during construction, but then it's not really functional. So how do we ensure it
Right.
remains functional?
So maintenance is the key with any structure, as we know, especially with rainwater harvesting systems. Just test it. If there's a recharge pit, just pour half a tanker of water when water is not scarce. Pour half a tanker to see whether it's recharging into the ground or not. Then try and find out whether the filter is clogged or not clogged. Make sure that the catchment of the roof, whether it's clean or not. These are simple precautions. And do a water test to figure out water is being stored, whether it's moving in the correct way or not. And it's not very difficult to do that. Once you understand where the problem is it at the roof level, is it at the filter level, is it at the storage or at the recharge level, then you fix that. Any good, decent plumber should be able to help you with that sort of auditing of the system.
So any other way of resources or policies available, resources or schemes available which help people learn about it and adopt it?
So there are many websites which tell you about rainwater harvesting, how it can be done, and many of them are run by educational institutions which are local, right? If you want to do rainwater harvesting in Chennai, it's different from how you do rainwater harvesting in Bangalore, or in Mumbai. It's different because the rainfall pattern is different, the water needs are different, and the soil profile is different. So go to the local one and pick up that information there. One good place to look at is the Central Groundwater Board websites. They give you basic information on geology, and sometimes they give you very good information on how to design rainwater recharge structures. So look out for websites which are credible from as close to you as is possible.
So contextual knowledge. Yeah.
Absolutely. And look at case studies which demonstrate how it's been working for some time, right? That will teach you a lot.
So how can we make this a movement, like bring more people pan-India across to practice this? Because that's what we're trying to do with GoGreenGuru as well. How do we enhance the community adoption of all these practices?
Correct. So first we practice ourselves, then we create a volunteer group of people who practice it. And so that group ideates, reach out to the public. You reach out to, for example, government schools and get a lot of kids interested in water harvesting, understanding what water harvesting. Reach out to colleges where environmental science is taught, agriculture is taught. Work with them to create this buzz around what rainwater harvesting means. Hold small rallies, celebrate World Water Day around rainwater harvesting structures, World Environment Day on rainwater harvesting structures. Create more conversations and build narratives of success stories and pilot projects of helping others, and then it becomes a movement. You don't start by designing a movement. You start by doing things and convincing 5 other people to follow you.
Would you have any journaling prompt or activity for people to deepen their understanding and connection with water?
Activity? Well, one of the activities that I recommend strongly is to go to your nearest lake. Go to it in terms of the rainy season when there's some water in it, and observe it carefully, both in terms of what's happening there, the quality of water, the quantity of water, and how nature behaves around it. If you get a chance to see a well close by which has water, observe the well and see how it responds to the rain, how it fluctuates, what's happening to it. If possible, clean up the water body, clean up the well, clean up the storm drain which brings water to it. So start by participating. Once you pick up let's say 10 bags of plastic littering a lake, the lake becomes yours. Then you hate people littering around you. But till you pick up that first plastic bag, you only feel a theoretical concern for the lake. The moment you pick it up, the moment you clean a space, then it's your space. And you get really irritated if people are littering and throwing stuff like that. So develop that association with that water body and develop a sense of ownership of that particular water body or even a well or anything of that sort. And then work your way to find solutions to persuade people not to litter, not to pollute, and to take care of it.
That's a beautiful activity to get closer to our resource. Just observe and connect with it. Would you have any other messages to share to our listeners?
Look at the livelihoods that are being created. Even in urban areas, when we regenerate lakes, we assume that it's for an aesthetic purpose, that we go walking around it or cycling around it. But just if you see a wetland, you see many people come, cut grass, take it for their cows as fodder. Yeah. There are many people who cut these reeds and make mats out of it. There are many livelihoods. There are small people who come and pick up small plants for their kitchen, edible plants, right? We don't even know about it, many of us about it. So a lake or a water body provides a lot of livelihood support. Once you start to see it, observe it, and understand it, then you'll start to appreciate it. And then you'll see it from the lens of the most marginalized who depend on nature as their resource base for living, right? And if we start to work to enhance that livelihood space and incorporate ecology or environment around it, it's a beautiful feeling that we get. So when the first painted star comes to one of the lakes that we are part of, it's such joy. You can't describe it, right? Or when we revive a tank in a village and water comes to it and paddy is cultivated, and the songs of paddy harvesting come back to the village after 12 years. Women harvest, when they harvest, they sing a song, right? There's a particular song to be sung during planting. There's a particular song to be sung during harvesting. If those songs come back and you have the privilege of being there and listening to it, it's a very nice feeling. The intangibles are perhaps more important than the tangibles itself. And so learn to appreciate the intangibles that we have around us and try to enhance it and make sure that it's available for future generations.
Yeah, songs and stories.
Yes.
Such an important part of our lives. Yeah,
Absolutely.
We kind of forgotten it. Yeah,
truly. So at the overflow of a tank, what they call hodiodu in Kannada, which means the tank is full, and it's a sense of joy for the whole village. They all get together. Every house has to contribute something or the other. Everybody participates around the festival, and then you have food there, cooked there. Everybody shares the food, right? So there's a sense of joy that water has come to us in abundance, like Pongal, right? When we celebrate abundance. So those cultural events are now sort of gone missing from our lives. At some point of time, we have to bring them back in a more accessible fashion for everybody and celebrate water in our lives. We don't have to feel water as only being guilty. Oh, I have polluted it or littered in it. We must celebrate water.
Let us celebrate water. That's really fitting into our conversation. Thank you so much. So how can people connect with you and with the work of Biome?
So we are all on biometrust.org, www.biometrust.org or www.urbanwaters.in. And I'm at ZenRainman on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere. So at ZenRainman, send me a message. Happy to talk to you.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I've learned a lot about the nuances of water today and how we can make it a part of our lives.
My pleasure, Ananya.
So, what are your takeaways? What are the steps you're going to implement in your life? Share it with us in the comments. Tag us on social media at GoGreenGuru SS or write to us at contact@GoGreenGuru.com. We'd love to hear your story. Share widely so we can build that water conversation. One drop, one story, one thought, one action at a time.